Hi, you're on the Reddit Confessions channel. Be a good boy, and maybe we'll have fun Friday. That's what she said, standing in the kitchen, sipping her green smoothie like she hadn't just dangled intimacy over my head like a bone in front of a starving dog. No eye contact, just that smirk she'd mastered over the years, a cocktail of sarcasm, power, and complete disregard for how her words might land. I stared at her for a few seconds. My hands were still wet from rinsing dishes, and the silence stretched long enough to make her glance up, amused. "Did I say something wrong?" she said, voice light, like this was all some kind of flirty game. I didn't answer. I walked over to the fridge, ripped down the magnetic calendar she obsessed over, color-coded, organized, controlling every minute of our lives, and just stared at it. Monday was marked with spin class. Tuesday said, wine with Maya. Friday? 2 words in red Sharpie. Our night. I peeled it off, folded it in half, dropped it in the trash. "You want Friday?" I said. "Earn Monday first." She blinked, like I'd spoken in another language. And that was the exact moment I knew. She didn't see me anymore. Not as a husband, not as a man, not even as a person. I was a placeholder, a space filler between her more exciting moments. A background character in the drama she was scripting for someone else. Because something had changed. Not just her tone, not just the way she kept her phone face down. It was deeper than that. Like she'd already left the marriage and forgot to mention it to me. I didn't confront her. Not yet. But I started paying attention. The second toothbrush in her gym bag. The 11:42 p.m. texts with no notifications. The way she got dressed up for the grocery store but wore sweatpants when we went to dinner. So I did what any spineless, emotionally starved man would do when he suspects his wife is cheating but still hopes he's wrong. I smiled through dinner, washed the dishes, and quietly started collecting truth. One screenshot. One accidental glance at her phone when she left it on the couch. One call to Maya, who, by the way, hasn't had wine with her in months. The day after I trashed her precious calendar, something shifted. Not in the way I hoped. Not in the direction of guilt or apology. No. Trina started performing. She cooked dinner. Like real dinner. Not her usual avocado on everything nonsense. Chicken piccata. Side salad. Wine. Candles. Even wore the old red top I once said I liked. Back when she used to care if I noticed. The thing is, it all felt off. Like she was checking boxes. Like she'd read in a magazine. 10 ways to distract a husband from noticing your affair. And me? I played along. I smiled. I even complimented the food. But deep down, I knew what this was, damage control. Later that night, while she was pretending to be asleep, I slid out of bed and went to the kitchen. I sat at the table, opened the voice memo app on my phone, and played back something I'd accidentally recorded earlier that day. It was a 43-second clip. I'd left my phone on the table while folding laundry, and it had started recording by itself. Total accident or fate. In the background, you could hear me humming to myself, then footsteps, hers, then her voice. Quiet, sharp, clearly on the phone. No, he doesn't suspect anything. He just had a mood. Thinks I've been distant. Whatever. He's sensitive, always has been. Pause laughter. No, I'm not canceling. You think I'd skip Friday for that? I stared at the screen like it had slapped me. So it wasn't just my imagination. She had something planned for Friday, and it didn't involve me. I didn't cry. I didn't throw anything. I just sat there, breathing through the wave of humiliation that swept over me. Because now it wasn't just suspicion, it was confirmation. The next morning, I did something I never thought I'd do. I made her breakfast. I smiled. I told her I was taking Friday off work just to be with her. Her reaction was gold. She froze mid-bite, eyes wide for half a second, then recovered with a forced laugh. "That's sweet," she said. "Spontaneous you." Spontaneous, my ass. I was staging a trap. I had already set up a spare phone with a recording app placed in her car's center console. I didn't want revenge. I wanted the truth laid out. Undeniable, raw, unedited. Because Friday? I wasn't going to wait at home. I was going to follow her. And where she ended up. Friday came. The day she'd reserved for fun. I told her I had a client meeting downtown, and she barely blinked. Said she was going to the spa and then maybe meeting up with her sister. She packed a bag, tiny, light, barely enough for the gym, and wore her hair down, the way she does when she wants attention from someone who isn't me. I kissed her on the cheek. She barely leaned in. Then she walked out the door, like I didn't exist. 10 minutes later, I grabbed my keys, took the second car, and tailed her. I was shaking the whole time. I'd never done anything like this. I didn't even know what I hoped to find. Part of me prayed I was wrong, that she really was getting a facial, that I'd be the idiot waiting in a parking lot outside a spa while she texted me selfies with cucumbers on her eyes. But no, she didn't go to a spa. She drove across town and pulled into a motel, the kind with rooms you enter directly from the parking lot. I watched her knock on door 207, and it opened immediately. A man, tall, shaved head, maybe early 30s, grinned as he pulled her inside like it was routine. Like this wasn't the first time. I sat there for a while, engine running, heart in my throat. I could have driven away, could have screamed, could have done something reckless. But instead, I parked, waited, and hit record on the backup phone I'd hidden in her car earlier that week. 20 minutes later, audio started coming through my Bluetooth. I shouldn't have listened, but I did. She was laughing. Not politely. Genuinely. The way she used to laugh with me before I became wallpaper in her life. Then I heard something that made my skin crawl. "You don't have to worry," she told him. "He doesn't have the guts to leave. He thinks I'm still going through something." She didn't even say my name. Just he. Like I was a stranger. A weak placeholder in her schedule. I stayed until she left. I followed her again, just to confirm the pattern. She didn't go to her sister's. She didn't go home to cry or wrestle with guilt. She went shopping, got coffee, took a selfie with her dog in the backyard. By the time I got back, she was humming in the kitchen like nothing happened. I didn't confront her that night. I needed time to think. I needed a plan. But I did one thing. I pulled her calendar out of the trash, grabbed a red Sharpie, and wrote something new on next Friday. "Your turn." And when she saw it the next morning, she thought it was flirtation, but it was a countdown. The moment she saw "your turn" scribbled in red on the calendar, her eyebrows lifted slightly. She looked at me over her coffee, mug halfway to her mouth, and asked, "What's that supposed to mean?" I shrugged and said nothing, pretending to scroll through emails. She chuckled like I was being cute. The audacity. She thought I was flirting, like we were still in some flirty marriage where I hadn't followed her to a motel room parking lot the day before. But something shifted that morning, not just in her tone, but in me. It wasn't rage. It wasn't sadness. It was clarity. I was done trying to fix something that had been broken beyond repair. I was done being the man she scheduled in pencil, always erasable, always optional. But if I was going to walk away, I wasn't going to let her rewrite the story. I wanted the truth to come out, and I wanted it to knock the wind out of her the way it had with me. So, I started laying groundwork. Quietly. Methodically. I reached out to her sister, the one she said she met for wine every other week. Casual at first, just to chat. Then I slipped in a joke about their girls' nights. Her sister hesitated, long enough to make my stomach sink. Then said, "We haven't done that in a while. She's always busy now." "Why?" I didn't answer. I just smiled and thanked her. Next, I called our bank. I played dumb. Asked about a couple of purchases I didn't recognize. Turns out, Trina had opened a second credit card 3 months ago under her maiden name. I asked for the statements. The charges? Motels. Gas stations across town. One spa day, probably the only time she wasn't lying. That night, she came home late. I didn't ask where she'd been. I just left a manila folder on her side of the bed. Inside, copies of the receipts. A screenshot of her message to Nick, not Zach. Turns out I had the wrong snake. And a photo of the motel door, number 207. She saw it when she changed into her pajamas. Froze. Looked at me like she didn't recognize who I was anymore. "What is this?" she asked. But her voice cracked. First time in months I'd seen her unsure. I said, "Your turn," and walked out of the bedroom. I spent the night in the guest room, door locked, headphones in. Not because I was scared. I just didn't want to hear the lies forming in her throat. The next morning, she acted like nothing had happened. Made breakfast. Chatted about the weather. Not a single word about the folder. But I could feel it, the panic bubbling under her skin, just waiting for the right moment to spill. She wasn't going to admit it. Not yet. She thought I'd cave, like always. But this time, I wasn't waiting. That afternoon, I scheduled something she'd never expect. Her Friday? It had been booked for lies. Mine? It was now booked for truth. And I was bringing witnesses. It was a strange feeling, watching someone lie to your face while you held the truth in your pocket. That week, she doubled down. Trina became oddly affectionate. like a raccoon sensing its way into a trap, trying to backpedal without looking obvious. She packed my lunch for the first time in years, wore perfume at breakfast, called me babe, which made my skin crawl. She even offered to plan something special for Friday. I nodded and said, great idea. The truth is, I had already planned it, down to the minute. On Thursday, I texted her sister again, told her I was doing a surprise date night for Trina and needed her help. She agreed to babysit our dog, something she rarely did unless begged. I also messaged Trina's coworker, a guy named Elliot, the one she used to complain about. I had a hunch. He responded in exactly 5 words, don't drag me into this. Bingo. That night, I printed screenshots, messages, hotel bookings, voice transcriptions from the hidden phone, a still shot from a cheap motel camera I got through a mutual friend who works security in that part of town. It was all going into one neat envelope, labeled Trina's date night. I didn't sleep that night, not out of sadness, out of anticipation, not revenge, either. I wasn't going to scream or humiliate her, but I was going to make her face what she built, brick by brick, behind my back. Friday evening, I told her to wear something nice. Told her we had reservations. She looked surprised but pleased, like the puppet show was working again. She wore that same red top, the one she thought would melt me. I just smiled, handed her the envelope, and told her to read it in the car on the way. The silence that followed was thick. She opened it, flipped through the first few pages. Her breathing changed. She laughed once, a dry, nervous chuckle, then said, this is crazy. But by the time she hit the screenshot from her own text, where she told Elliot, he won't leave. He needs me more than I need him, her hand started shaking. I pulled into the parking lot of the restaurant. It was already half full. Dim lighting, warm atmosphere, quiet music. Nothing dramatic. I wasn't going to throw wine or cause a scene, but I did invite 3 guests. Her sister, my brother, and Elliot. They were already at the table when we walked in. Trina froze in the doorway. I didn't say a word, just gestured toward the table. She whispered, you're not serious. Oh, I said quietly, I'm deadly serious. Her legs moved on autopilot, like she didn't want to go but couldn't figure out how not to. She sat across from her sister. My brother said nothing. Elliot looked like he wanted to disappear into the carpet. I took my seat last, laid the envelope flat on the table, and said one sentence that hit harder than anything I'd ever said to her in our marriage. Let's all talk about the truth you've been juggling. And then I waited. The moment I said it, let's all talk about the truth you've been juggling. Trina flinched like the table had bitten her. For a full 10 seconds, nobody moved. Even the server, who had been walking over with menus, paused mid-step and backed away quietly like he felt the tension hanging in the air. I didn't need yelling. I had the truth, and the truth sat there in black ink and still images right in front of her. Her sister was the first to speak. Is this about the hotel receipts? Her tone was soft, but the judgment was there. Trina blinked at her, stunned. You knew? She asked, like betrayal had just slapped her in the face. Ironic, considering she had served me a steady diet of betrayal for months. Her sister nodded slowly. Curtis told me last week. I didn't want to believe it, but now I've seen it. I turned to Elliot, who looked like he was sitting on a landmine. You ever wonder what it feels like to be the guy your coworker laughs about while sneaking off to motel rooms? He didn't answer, just looked down at the glass of water in front of him like it had all the answers he needed. But I wasn't doing this for his guilt or her shame. I was doing this because for once in our marriage, I wanted my voice in the room. Not the version of me she twisted in her stories. The real me. Trina cleared her throat. I didn't mean for it to get that far, she said, eyes darting everywhere except at me. It just happened. That line. That classic line. As if motel bookings and fake wine nights and secret text chains just materialized out of thin air. As if I hadn't spent months wondering why I felt more alone in our marriage than I ever did as a single man. You said I wouldn't leave, I reminded her. That I needed you more than you needed me. I was angry, she snapped, suddenly defensive. You were distant. You stopped trying. You always looked tired, like you didn't even want me anymore. I leaned back in my chair. I was tired. Tired of chasing a ghost. Tired of being Plan B while you booked Plan A in 30-minute motel windows. She looked at her sister, searching for sympathy, but all she got was a long, slow blink. You could have just told him, her sister muttered. You could have ended it before you wrecked it. And then my brother, who had stayed silent this whole time, pushed his chair back. I think we've heard enough. He looked at me. You good? I nodded. For the first time in a long time, I actually was. Trina sat there, frozen. Her makeup perfect, her hair curled, her dress tight enough to impress whoever she thought she'd be seeing after. But she wasn't leaving that table with power. She was leaving with silence. I stood, left the envelope behind, and said, "Consider this dinner your goodbye." I walked out of that restaurant without looking back. After I walked out of that restaurant, I didn't go home. I didn't even drive straight anywhere. I parked near the lake, sat in the dark, and let the weight of it all finally drop. You'd think I'd feel victorious, like I'd just pulled off the ultimate mic drop. But the truth? I felt hollow, like I'd walked out of a house fire holding nothing but ashes. Everything I had built, protected, held on to, it was gone. And she hadn't even tried to stop it. I stayed out until nearly midnight. When I pulled into the driveway, the house was dark. No porch light. No apology waiting in the doorway. I half expected her to be gone, honestly. But when I opened the front door, her purse was still there. Her shoes. Her scent. She was upstairs, lights off, door closed. She didn't say a word. The next morning, I emailed my boss and took a week off. I needed space to figure out what life looked like now. Not just logistically, but emotionally. What does a man do when the woman he vowed to grow old with becomes the stranger he can't even sit across from? I walked through the house like it was a museum of fake memories. Every photo frame felt staged. Every throw pillow a prop. She had rehearsed our life like a script, and I'd been the audience applauding on cue. By the third day, she finally cracked. I came home from a walk to find her sitting at the dining table, eyes puffy, envelope open in front of her. "I didn't think you'd actually do it," she said quietly. "Do what? Expose me like that? Bring them all. Make me look like a monster." I looked at her long and hard. "I didn't make you look like anything. You just didn't expect me to hold up the mirror." She stood, voice shaking. "You humiliated me." "No, Trina. You did that to yourself. I just stopped covering for you." She started crying then, real ugly tears, not the staged ones. Her mascara smeared, and for a moment, I thought maybe she finally felt it. The regret, the guilt, the damage. But then she said something that told me everything I needed to know. I just wanted to feel wanted again. It wasn't about me. It never had been. It was about her. Her needs. Her validation. Her boredom. And I was just the background noise she muted whenever something shinier walked in. So I did what she didn't expect. I didn't yell. I didn't fight. I handed her an envelope of my own. Inside, a list of every shared account, split evenly. Access removed. Passwords changed. And a letter from a lawyer. She gasped when she saw it. "You're actually divorcing me?" "I'm finally respecting myself," I said. She crumpled into the chair like the air had been knocked out of her. "You won't survive without me." That's when I smiled, not out of spite, but because that sentence told me everything. Even now, in the ruins, she thought I needed her more than she ever needed me. "No," I said, turning toward the door. "I just finally stopped surviving with you. It's strange how quickly your world can rebuild once you stop trying to save what was never real." The day after I handed her the divorce papers, I booked a small cabin 3 hours out of town. No Wi-Fi, no distractions. Just me, a notebook, and time. It wasn't some dramatic escape. It was clarity. For the first time in years, I wasn't walking on eggshells or rehearsing the right version of myself to keep someone else happy. And that silence? It didn't feel empty. It felt clean. I thought I'd spiral, but I didn't. I journaled. I cooked simple meals. I slept without waking up in a cold sweat. I didn't check my phone waiting for explanations that would never come, because I already had the truth. And the truth, as painful as it was, had set me free. 2 weeks after the papers were served, I got a letter in the mail from Trina. Not an email, not a text, a handwritten letter. It was 5 pages long. She poured it all out: admissions, regrets, blame, guilt, denial. She said she missed me, said she made a mistake, that she wasn't in love with the other man, just with the attention, that she never thought I'd have the strength to leave. She ended it with, "If you ever decide to come back, I'll be waiting." I folded it once, put it in the drawer, and never replied. Because I didn't want to go back. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want validation. I just wanted peace. And surprisingly, I found it. Now, I'm living in a smaller place, working remotely, going to therapy once a week. I joined a group for people recovering from emotional betrayal. Turns out, I'm not alone in this. Far from it. We share stories, but more importantly, we share growth. No more good boy games. No more chasing Friday night crumbs. I've rebuilt from the inside out. And no, I'm not bitter. I'm not angry. I'm just awake. To anyone out there who's been made to feel like they have to earn love, let me say this. You don't. If someone hangs affection over your head like a prize, it's not love. It's control. You deserve better. I did too. Thanks for sticking with me through this journey on Reddit Confessions. If there was one moment in this story that shocked you, moved you, or reminded you of something in your own life, drop it in the comments. What part made you pause and think? And remember, healing doesn't always look loud. Sometimes, it's just the quiet choice to finally walk away. See you in the next story.